as you become more and more mature in your convictions and in your trust of Jesus, you're able to communicate these things with maybe a little bit less pressure on you. So then you don't have to be quite as excited.
Hey friends, it's Abdu Murray, and I'm coming to you with a second segment with my friend John Noyes. And the reason I'm bringing this to you right now is because John and I had a little off-the-air conversation. We were talking about all the coulda, shoulda, wouldas that are afforded to us, the plethora of experiences both he and I have had having coulda, shoulda, wouldas. And he started talking about a topic that was incredibly important, I think, because my guess is plenty of you have had not just the one time you coulda, shoulda, or woulda said something, but maybe a record of time where you think like, it's been too much. I've blown it for too long to have any credibility now. And John and I were talking, and he mentioned something like this, and I thought, people have to hear this. So I know I sound excited because I am, because this is an important thing. I know many of you have gone through it, and John wants to share something. Well, I want him to share something. He just did it impromptu. But let's just jump into it. So John Noyes, if you haven't watched the first part of my interview with John on a coulda, shoulda, woulda, please go back and watch that. You'll get a little bit of more background on John's own experiences and in terms of his faith journey. So go back and watch that. But real quick, John's with Stand to Reason, a wonderful apologetics ministry that really helps Christians learn how to defend their faith and actually strengthen their own and bolster their own beliefs. So he does this a lot and for a living. But John, you were sharing with me off the air a story, or basically not a story, but an experience where when you first became a Christian and you were talking to people you loved and cared about, where you felt like maybe the credit you had was burned away because of the way you were acting, and how can you repair that? So share with us a little bit about that. I'd love to, and I've sort of mischaracterized it a little bit in the summary. You more accurately characterize it and tell us what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, I think it was a good characterization. When you first become a Christian, at least for me, my background's legal. I like the argument. I like to discover truth, and I like to press into it. And when this happened with me and my family, I found Jesus, or he found me, and all of a sudden, like, I'm super excited, because everything has changed, and I'm just in my passion and in my love, and it is out of a good place. I ended up being what I call a jerk for Jesus. I mean, to the people I like the most and the people I love the most, like my family, like my mom and my brother and my sister. And you're excited because you found this new thing and you realize that the world is a certain way and you want to share it with everybody. But then all of a sudden you start sharing and you just steamroll people, or you knock them down and you forget to lift them back up. And then the way I say it is that, I spent during the first probably 2 or 3, 4 years of being a Christian, I feel like I spent a lot of my relational equity. I just kind of tossed it away because I just became this jerk for Jesus. And then you have to start building it back up, and I feel like it took me twice as long to build it back up in order to be able to share again. And then as you become more and more mature in your convictions and in your trust of Jesus, you're able to communicate these things with maybe a little bit less pressure on you. So then you don't have to be quite as excited. Or you're with my mom in particular. This is a story. I didn't share this off the air. This is a great story here. So I'm sitting in my living room in my house, and my mom is from Massachusetts visiting. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm living in California.
You can tell.
Yeah, I know. It comes out when I get excited. So she's sitting in the chair, and we're talking about really important things. Now, she's a relativist, right? So she doesn't believe in objective truth. And I'm pressing her really, really hard. I'm using all the tactics. I'm using everything. I'm saying, well, is that true? Oh, yeah. Well, is that true? Well, is it true that there's no truth? And she's like, oh, my gosh. And she says this, I'll never forget this, Abdu. She says to me, she stops the conversation. She says, John, what you're saying sounds like it might be true, but how you say it is awful. And I remember being crushed inside, being absolutely crushed inside, and thinking to myself, oh man, something needs to change. And now this is probably 6 or 7 years ago. So it's halfway. I'm only like 15 or 16 years in the Lord. I've only been a Christian for 16 years. So this is like halfway through my I thought I was mature. I thought I was it. Like at the time I was a pastor, and I'm like, this is, I'm the professional Christian. I should be able to do this with my mom, certainly. And she's just like, you're being a jerk. She didn't say that, but that's what she meant. And know what the cool thing is, Abdu? This is true. This is a true story. She gets up. We talk a little bit, and I apologize. Luckily I was humble enough to say, you know what, Mom, I am so sorry. Like, I don't ever want to be like that, because sometimes we don't realize it. She got up and she's like, hey, it's okay, whatever. It's time for bed anyway. So she got up and she went into the room where we had an extra bedroom right off the living room. And she went in there. My kids were in there messing around, and that's where all my books were. They were just messing around on the bookshelf. And on the book was on the bed was one book. And that book was Relativism, Feet Firmly Planted in Midair by Greg Koukl and Francis Beckwith. And that night, my mom, she read half the book. And then she came out the next morning and she's like, John, I think you're absolutely right. Truth exists. And it's just like, oh my gosh, right? So here I am feeling all the pressure with my mom, and it's out of a good place. I didn't want to be a jerk, but just how it comes across. You can tell I get excited about these things. And so I get in your face, and I'm a big guy like you, Abdu. Like, I'm a big dude, so I have a presence, and we have to be more reserved. We have to be more focused on, okay, I need to stay calm. And that's not the way I was. I love my mom and I want to see her in heaven. I want to see her in glory. So out of that desire came a passion that was just overwhelming. But even in that instance, when my mom calls me out, you have to be humble. You say, oh man, you know what? Maybe you're right. Ouch. And then even in that, God puts another voice, a voice of two authors, in the next room through a book. And now, now she right now, currently she professes Christ. So, I mean, she, and so it's interesting, she started her journey, and I'm looking forward to next time I see her. Actually, this month, I'll see her in 10 days. And get to have more conversations with her. So
that's awesome.
God uses it, man.
Yeah. Well, what a tremendously encouraging story, because we will blow it. And sometimes we'll blow it, not just by what we didn't say or what fact we didn't give or the argument we didn't articulate well, but sometimes we misstate our character and our concern. And whether it's out of a good place because we care about someone so passionately that we come off a certain way, or it's because we're actually being an honest to goodness actual jerk.
Yeah.
Friends, let me just tell you something. John, your story is so helpful because there's plenty of folks who think that they've burned enough relational capital where there's no going back with certain people.
Yeah.
Your mom has a faith in Christ, despite the fact that for years, up to and including that conversation, that capital may have been burned when it comes to spiritual conversations, but God can redeem anything. I am so glad you and I talked off the air about a different incident, and that you shared this. This is one of the most powerful episodes we've had of this. And brother, I want to thank you for the openness and the transparency. Once again, you doubled down on it. Thanks again for that, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for doing this. This is a great project.
Yeah, well, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Friends, that's coulda, shoulda, woulda for this time. Tune in for another one coming up soon.